At the Redwood City Police Department, RCPD, around 2:30 p.m. on April 19th. The afternoon work hours had begun a while ago, but the waiting lobby wasn't overly crowded, with only a few citizens patiently waiting for their turn, their faces clearly showing impatience or resignation. Standing before the main reception counter, where a thick bulletproof glass panel separated the police from the public, was an elderly black man. His name was Samuel Bellwether, 70 years old. Although age had etched deep wrinkles onto his weathered face and his hair was mostly gray, his posture was still quite straight and sturdy, a sign of a life of hard manual labor. He wore very ordinary clothing, perhaps even a bit worn. Beige khaki pants faded at the knees, a simple dress shirt buttoned neatly up to the collar. He stood there, his eyes, though somewhat tired, still held a glint of integrity and a hint of unconcealed frustration, his calloused, dark hands resting lightly on the cold glass counter. Inside the glass booth, the picture was completely different. Officer Ray Jenkins, a white man in his late 50s, with close-cropped salt and pepper hair, a ruddy face, and a perpetual scowl as if the whole world owed him something, was lounging in an office swivel chair. His dirty police-issued boots were propped up on a corner of the paper-strewn desk, a thoroughly unprofessional and disrespectful posture, although hidden from the direct view of the citizens outside. He was idly flipping through a sports magazine, completely ignoring the elderly man waiting. Standing next to Jenkins, leaning against a steel filing cabinet, was Officer Chris Novak. Novak was much younger than Jenkins, around his early 30s, tall and well-built, with a shaved head and a smug look on his face. Novak stood with his arms crossed, looking at Mr. Samuel through the thick glass with a gaze mixed with curiosity, mockery, and obvious impatience. "Look here, old man," Jenkins finally spoke, but his voice was slurred, curt, and full of contempt, his eyes still glued to the magazine. "How many times have I told you? This is the third time you've been here this week. We don't have the golden time to deal with trivial matters like your car getting paint scraped." Mr. Samuel took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice calm, despite the frustration built up from the previous 2 visits. "Officer, I understand you are very busy with many important cases, but as I explained, that car didn't just scrape mine. It hit it, dented the rear bumper, broke the taillight, and then fled. That's a violation of the law, a hit and run. I just want you to please file an official report according to procedure. That is my right as a citizen, as a victim." Novak let out a sneer, a sound unpleasant in the tense atmosphere. "Rights? Who do you think you are to demand rights here? Look at yourself. Do you look like someone with rights?" he muttered, but loud enough for Mr. Samuel to hear through the small gap under the glass. Jenkins threw the magazine down on the desk with a dry thud. He leaned forward, moving closer to the glass, lowering his voice, but the threat in it increased. "Listen closely, old man. You're wasting the police department's time. We have murder and robbery cases to investigate. No time to worry about your junk car getting a little paint scratched." He deliberately emphasized the words, junk car. "You'd better get lost immediately before we lose patience and charge you with disturbing the peace." Mr. Samuel's persistence, honed through years of facing hardship and injustice, was not swayed by those threats. He was all too familiar with this attitude, but he couldn't accept it, especially not in a place that was supposed to represent justice. He looked straight into Jenkins's eyes through the thick glass, his voice still even but firmer. "I'm not going anywhere until my legitimate request is addressed. I have the right to have an incident report filed. You are deliberately refusing to perform your duties and responsibilities. The fact that an elderly black man in shabby clothes, whom Jenkins and Novak looked down on, dared to stand up, confront them, demand his rights, and mention duty and responsibility, was like a direct slap in the face to the 2 lazy and prejudiced officers. Jenkins felt challenged, publicly humiliated. Anger flared up inside him, clouding any remaining reason. "You dare say I'm not doing my duty?" he roared, his face flushing crimson. He could no longer maintain his feigned composure. He turned to Novak, his eyes flashing, signaling him. "Novak! Open the door. Let's show this stubborn old man what disturbing the peace at the police department means." Novak, appearing obedient and somewhat excited about the prospect of action, quickly pressed the control button on the desk. The gray-painted steel security door beside the counter clicked open dryly. Jenkins forcefully pushed the door open, stepping out from the secure area behind the glass, advancing towards Mr. Samuel with an aggressive demeanor, his face etched with anger and the triumphant look of someone in power. "Hands on your head!" Jenkins yelled loudly, his voice echoing through the lobby, causing a few citizens to startle and turn around. "You're under arrest for disturbing the peace at the police department." Mr. Samuel froze, not out of fear, but because of the utter absurdity of the situation. "Arrest me? What are you arresting me for? Just because I wanted to exercise my citizen's right to report an incident?" He tried to reason, but Jenkins didn't want to hear anything anymore. He had decided to teach this old man a lesson he wouldn't forget. He gestured with his chin to Novak, who had quickly moved behind Mr. Samuel. Novak grabbed the old man's thin right arm, wrenching it behind his back roughly and unexpectedly. "Ah!" Mr. Samuel cried out in pain, staggering forward. His left arm was also quickly seized by Novak and forced behind him. Click! The cold, dry sound of the stainless steel handcuffs echoed distinctly in the lobby space, which was growing eerily silent. Mr. Samuel Bellwether's old, wrinkled wrists, veined and prominent, were clamped tightly by the two cold metal rings. A few citizens sitting nearby gaped in astonishment, unable to believe the scene unfolding before their eyes. A gentle old man, who had come to the police department seeking help, was being cruelly handcuffed and arrested by the very people who represented the law. Jenkins and Novak looked at each other, smug smiles on their lips. They had succeeded in quashing the nuisance. But they had no idea that the click of those handcuffs not only tightened around the old man's wrists, but was also the knock signaling the end of their own careers. Mr. Samuel Bellwether stood there in the cold lobby of the police department, hands tightly cuffed behind his back, a sharp pain radiating from his wrists up to his shoulders. But that physical pain was nothing compared to the feelings of humiliation, indignation, and helplessness invading his soul. He had lived an honest life, worked hard, raised his children well, always respected the law and those who enforced it. Yet now, in his twilight years, he was being treated worse than a criminal, simply because of his skin color, his old clothes, and because he dared to demand his legitimate rights. The dark green 1998 Buick LeSabre was his pride and joy. It wasn't an expensive or modern car, but it was the fruit of his long years working hard in the wood shop, a reliable companion on every road. He had maintained it himself, repaired every little detail, kept the paint gleaming, the engine still running smoothly. It wasn't just transportation. It was a keepsake, a part of his life. Yet a few days ago, when he had parked it neatly on the street in front of the modest apartment complex where he lived, a young man driving a burgundy Ford F-150 pickup truck, distracted by his phone while backing up, had slammed right into the rear of his Buick. The impact was quite strong, leaving the rear bumper deeply dented and the right taillight shattered. That young man, instead of stopping to take responsibility, just looked around for a few seconds and then sped off, leaving Mr. Samuel standing stunned, watching in anger and helplessness. Fortunately, Mrs. Henderson, his kind neighbor in the opposite apartment, also witnessed the incident, and together they managed to jot down part of the pickup's license plate. The first 3 letters were FTR. With the faint hope of finding the person responsible, or at least getting an official report to work with his insurance company, Mr. Samuel had gone to the Redwood City Police Department. The first time, he met a young female officer. She listened to his account indifferently, scribbled a few lines on a piece of paper, and told him to go home and wait. "We'll contact you if there's any information." but the wait dragged on in vain. The second time he returned, he encountered Officer Ray Jenkins. As soon as he mentioned the hit-and-run involving his old car, Jenkins showed open contempt. He glanced at the paper with the 3 license plate letters and waved his hand dismissively. FTR? There are thousands of pickup trucks starting with FTR in this city. You think we can find a needle in a haystack? You probably saw wrong, or maybe your car was already wrecked? Jenkins said, his voice full of scorn, making no effort to hide his discrimination. Mr. Samuel felt insulted, but he still tried to explain that he was sure of what he saw and just needed an official report. Jenkins brushed him off, saying it was an insignificant incident, and told him not to waste his time. Not giving up, Mr. Samuel decided to come a third time, with the final hope of meeting an officer with more conscience and responsibility. But fate played a cruel trick. He ran into Jenkins again, and this time, Novak was there too. And so, the preceding tragedy had occurred. That brutal and senseless act took place right before the eyes of Sergeant Davis, who was sitting at the dispatch console nearby. Davis frowned, shaking his head wearily at his colleague's behavior, but indifference or a vague fear prevented him from intervening. He simply turned away, focusing on the computer screen in front of him, pretending not to see anything, abandoning the poor old man to suffer extreme injustice. Officers Jenkins and Novak stood on either side of him, their faces showing clear triumph and satisfaction. "See? Told you not to be stubborn, but you wouldn't listen," Jenkins said, his voice condescending. "Now you know the consequences of resisting the police, right? Get ready to go to the holding cell and reflect on your citizens' rights," Novak sneered, nudging Mr. Samuel's shoulder roughly. "You can demand and ask all you want in there." They intended to push him towards a gray metal door in the corner of the lobby, labeled Holding Cell. But contrary to their expectations, Mr. Samuel showed no panic, didn't beg, didn't curse. Instead, he stood tall with dignity, despite his hands being tightly cuffed behind his back. He looked straight at Jenkins, then at Novak, his eyes no longer holding frustration or indignation, but rather deep disappointment, immense sadness, and even a strange touch of pity. He let out a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of decades facing injustice. "You boys," he said, his voice low and steady without a tremor, "I'm telling you the truth. You will regret your actions today." Those calm but meaningful words made Jenkins and Novak burst out laughing. They thought the old man was trying desperately to act tough, or that he was genuinely senile. "Regret?" Jenkins guffawed, his coarse laughter echoing through the lobby. "Old man, what nonsense are you talking? Who do you think you are to say we'll regret it? A dirt-poor old black man driving a junk car, arrested for disturbing the peace? Who cares?" Novak laughed along, his face full of contempt. "Or are you trying to threaten us? What do you think you can do to us? You should worry more about yourself." Mr. Samuel shook his head slightly, no longer bothering to argue with those derogatory remarks. He knew further talk was useless. He needed to see someone who could resolve this matter fairly. "I'm not threatening anyone," he said. "I just want to exercise my rights. I demand to see the chief of police." This request, once again, sent Jenkins and Novak into fits of laughter. They looked at each other as if they had just heard the funniest joke in the world. "See the chief?" Novak repeated, his voice mimicking and mocking. "Old man, are you senile? Do you think Chief Bellwether, the head of law enforcement for this entire city, has precious time to meet some troublemaking old man dressed in rags like you? You're daydreaming." "That's right," Jenkins added, deliberately emphasizing the name. "You should know your place. Chief Bellwether is busy solving major cases, dealing with important city matters. He doesn't have time for your issues. It's better if you just quietly come with us to the holding cell." Mr. Samuel maintained his strange calm. It seemed the taunts didn't affect him at all. He looked straight into Novak's eyes, then Jenkins. You don't need to worry whether the chief is busy or not, he said slowly, enunciating each word clearly. You just need to go inform Chief Marcus Bellwether. He paused, intentionally stressing the full name and title again. That Samuel Bellwether wants to see him. Just say exactly that. The moment the name Samuel Bellwether was uttered so clearly, linked with the name and title Chief Marcus Bellwether, the smug smiles on Jenkins and Novak's faces instantly froze. They stiffened, looking at each other with eyes full of bewilderment and a vague fear beginning to creep in. Bellwether? Samuel Bellwether? Same last name as the boss? You just said what? Jenkins stammered, his voice suddenly losing all its confidence and arrogance. His face began to turn from ruddy to pale. Your name is Samuel Bellwether? Novak also gaped, his eyes wide as he stared at the elderly black man before him as if seeing a ghost. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. But, the chief, you can't be. That's right, Mr. Samuel said, his voice still calm but his eyes no longer weary, replaced instead by gravity and a touch of sadness. I am Samuel Bellwether, and Chief Marcus Bellwether, the one you just mentioned, is my biological son. That final statement struck Jenkins and Novak like a sledgehammer blow. They stood frozen in place, their bodies seemingly turned to stone. Son? Chief Marcus Bellwether, the respected commander, a symbol of advancement for the black community in Redwood City, renowned for his integrity, fairness, and extreme strictness regarding abuse of power and discrimination within the force, was the son of this poor, shabbily dressed elderly black man whom they had just insulted, refused to help, and brutally handcuffed? No, it couldn't possibly be true. This had to be some grotesque joke, an unbelievable coincidence, or maybe this old man was lying, trying to use the boss's name to scare them. You're lying, Novak shouted in desperation and panic, but his voice trembled violently, devoid of any strength. You can't possibly be the boss's father. You're tricking us. You have the right not to believe, Mr. Samuel interrupted, his voice retaining its uncanny calm. But the truth never changes just because you don't want to believe it. Right at that fateful moment, as if arranged by a masterful director, the frosted glass door leading to the office area at the end of the lobby swung open. Chief Marcus Bellwether stepped out. He had just finished a tense meeting with his captains and was planning to step outside for some fresh air or to check on the general situation in the department's various sections. He was a tall, well-built black man in his late 40s, with a square, resolute face and sharp, intelligent eyes. He wore a crisply ironed dark blue police uniform, the chief's insignia gleaming on his shoulders under the lights, exuding an undeniable aura of authority and power. His gaze habitually swept across the lobby area, and then he stopped short. His entire body seemed to freeze for a moment as he saw the scene unfolding right in front of the main reception counter. Two of his officers, Jenkins and Novak, standing there with looks of utter panic, and the man standing between them, the man handcuffed behind his back, the man looking at him with sad but resolute eyes, was his own father, Mr. Samuel Bellwether. "Dad!" Marcus Bellwether exclaimed, his voice filled with astonishment, unable to believe what he was seeing. In an instant, that astonishment turned into terrible anger and extreme worry for his elderly father. He strode forward quickly with long steps, his already serious face darkening like the sky before a thunderstorm. "What the hell is going on here?" he roared, his powerful and furious voice resounding through the lobby, causing everyone, including the waiting citizens, to hold their breath. Seeing the chief suddenly appear with a face like thunder, Jenkins and Novak knew their last hopes had vanished into thin air. They had truly committed a monstrous blunder. Chief. Jenkins stammered, trying to find some explanation, but his mind was completely blank. "It's just a small misunderstanding, sir," This old gentleman, he was causing a disturbance. Disturbance? Marcus Bellwether cut him off, his voice dropping dangerously low, like the growl of an angered beast. He didn't even look at his two subordinates anymore. His eyes were fixed on his father's cuffed hands, then lifted to his old but resilient face. You handcuffed my own father right here in this police department and dare to call it a misunderstanding? He didn't wait for an answer. He hurried to his father's side, placing a hand on his shoulder gently but full of concern. Dad, are you okay? Did they do anything to you? Mr. Samuel shook his head slightly, trying to force a smile to reassure his son, though the smile looked strained. I'm all right, Marcus. Don't worry too much. It's just that these officers were a bit overly enthusiastic in their duties. Hearing his father say that made Marcus's heart clench tighter with sorrow and anger. Enthusiastic? He knew damn well it wasn't enthusiasm. It was abuse of power, discrimination, a callousness bordering on cruelty. He spun back towards Jenkins and Novak, who were still standing frozen, their faces white as sheets, looking like they were about to faint. Which one of you, Marcus asked, his voice ice cold, gave the idiotic order to handcuff him? Sir, it was me. Jenkins tremblingly mumbled the admission, his head bowed low, not daring to look his commander in the eye. Take the cuffs off him immediately! Marcus roared again, his shout even louder this time, filled with fury and an irresistible command. Immediately! Do you hear me? Novak frantically fumbled in his pocket for the handcuff keys, but his hands trembled so much he dropped the keys, which clattered onto the cold tiled floor. Jenkins hastily bent down to pick them up, and together they clumsily, awkwardly managed to insert the tiny key into the lock of the cuffs clamped on Mr. Samuel's wrist. Click! Click! Two dry metallic sounds rang out as the handcuffs finally sprang open. Deep red welts were starkly visible on the old man's dark, wrinkled skin, a silent testament to the brutal treatment he had just endured. And then, the moment Mr. Samuel's hands were free, an unprecedented scene unfolded in the lobby of the Redwood City Police Department. Officer Ray Jenkins and Officer Chris Novak, two large, strong men in uniform symbolizing power and law, suddenly dropped to both knees on the cold floor. They knelt down, right in front of Chief Marcus Bellwether and his elderly father. Chief, please forgive us, Chief, Jenkins begged tearfully, tears and snot streaming down his ruddy face, his appearance utterly pathetic. We truly didn't know it was your father, sir. We were blind as bats. We were so ignorant. Please spare us, Chief. Give us a chance. Please consider our years of service. Novak was even worse, practically prostrating himself on the floor, banging his head repeatedly against the hard tiles. Please, sir, please forgive us. We deserve to die. Please forgive us, Chief. We know we were wrong, truly, truly wrong. Please don't fire us. We have wives and young children at home. The spectacle of two imposing police officers, who moments ago were arrogant and abusive, now kneeling, crying, and desperately begging an elderly black man and the young chief in the middle of the police station lobby, stunned everyone present, from civilian employees to the waiting citizens, leaving them gaping in astonishment. Power and status had reversed dramatically and theatrically in the blink of an eye. A mixture of satisfaction and a touch of pity appeared in the eyes of those witnessing this humiliating self-abasement. Chief Marcus Bellwether stood there, solid as a rock statue, silently watching his two subordinates groveling, crying, and begging at his and his father's feet. His face showed no flicker of emotion or sympathy, only cold disgust and profound, utter disappointment. He knew full well these tears and apologies stemmed not from genuine remorse for their wrongdoing, but purely from extreme fear of having offended the wrong person, fear of losing their jobs, their power, and status. Their cowardice and opportunism only deepened his contempt. He didn't respond to their pleas immediately. He let the heavy silence hang over the lobby, allowing the humiliating image of Jenkins and Novak to speak for itself as a lesson about the abuse of power and its consequences. The gazes of the surrounding citizens, shifting from astonishment to contempt, were also an instant punishment for the two who had acted so arrogantly moments before. After a long pause, Marcus turned and gently helped his father sit down on the nearest plastic chair. He squatted down beside him, carefully examining the deep red marks on Mr. Samuel's thin wrists. The marks were still clearly visible, slightly swollen. "How are you feeling now, Dad?" he asked again, his voice gentle but full of worry. "Do your wrists hurt much? Do you need me to call a doctor to check them out?" Mr. Samuel shook his head, gently patting his son's hand. "I'm fine, Marcus. Don't worry so much. They're just marks. They'll fade soon enough. Besides, I'm old. A little pain like this is nothing." He tried to appear strong, not wanting his son to worry further. But Marcus knew the emotional wound his father had just suffered was far more painful than the marks on his wrists. The insult, the contempt, the unjust treatment right in the place his own son headed, that was what hurt the most. He took a deep breath, suppressing the swirling emotions, then stood up straight, turning back to face Jenkins and Novak, who were still anxiously kneeling on the floor. "Get up!" Marcus ordered again, his voice cold now, devoid of outward anger, but the decisiveness and authority had intensified manifold. Jenkins and Novak tremblingly helped each other up, but they remained hunched over like criminals, their faces bowed to the ground, not daring to look the chief in the eye. "Listen carefully," Marcus began, his voice even, but each word hammered down on the future of his two subordinates. "Your actions today were not merely a failure in your duties, a professional shortcoming. They were a betrayal of the oath you swore when you joined this police force, the oath to serve and protect all citizens of Redwood City, regardless of race, status, or circumstance." He paused briefly, letting his words sink in. "You failed in the most basic duty of receiving and processing a report from a citizen in need of help. You displayed a disgusting, discriminatory attitude, using grossly insulting language towards an elderly, respectable man." His gaze turned sharper, colder. "And the pinnacle of unforgivable abuse of power and stupidity. You arrested him completely unlawfully, using unnecessary force against a 70-year-old man, right here in the lobby of this police department, in front of numerous citizens. You," he emphasized each syllable, "have brought shame upon me. You have subjected my father to humiliation, and you have disgraced this entire Redwood City Police Department. You have personally soiled the uniform that should be a symbol of honor and justice. You are no longer worthy to wear it." He turned to Sergeant Davis, who was standing formally nearby, still holding his notebook. "Sergeant Davis!" "Yes, sir." Davis took a step forward, his demeanor respectful. "Immediately begin compiling a detailed report of this entire incident. Record the full statements from my father, from yourself as a witness, and from all citizens present who have agreed to testify. Ensure all information is recorded accurately, objectively, and without omitting any details." "Yes, sir. I'll get right on it," Sergeant Davis replied, quickly starting the task. He knew this report would be crucial evidence for the upcoming investigation. Marcus Bellwether turned back to Jenkins and Novak, the two standing like statues, devoid of all color in their faces. "Officer Ray Jenkins, Officer Chris Novak, effective immediately, I order you both. Surrender your standard-issue firearms, police badges, and department identification cards." Jenkins and Novak froze for a moment, then tremblingly complied with this final order. They unholstered the Glock sidearms from their hips, removed the shiny metal 5-pointed star badges and their plastic photo ID cards from their shirt fronts, placing them on the nearby reception counter in heavy silence. These were the last symbols of the power and careers they had just lost. "From this moment forward," Marcus announced clearly, his voice echoing through the lobby, "you are both officially placed on indefinite administrative leave without pay. pending the results of the investigation and the final disciplinary decision from Internal Affairs. He looked them straight in the eyes, his gaze unwavering. I think you're both smart enough to know what that result will be, but procedure must be followed. He jerked his chin towards the exit. Now leave this police department immediately. Go home and await notification. Do not show up here again unless officially summoned by Internal Affairs for the investigation. Understood? Yes. Yes, sir. Jenkins and Novak mumbled, their voices filled with despair. Without weapons, badges, or ID cards, the two men now looked pathetic and diminished in their now meaningless police uniforms. They didn't dare say another word, silently turning, heads bowed low, and took heavy shuffling steps out of the police station lobby under the contemptuous, satisfied, and slightly pitying gazes of those who had witnessed the entire drama unfold. The automatic door closed behind them, like a final permanent closing of the door on their police careers. Once the figures of the two abusive officers had disappeared, Marcus Bellwether let out a soft sigh of relief, though worry and anger were still etched on his face. He returned to his father, sitting down beside him. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have managed my subordinates better so things like this don't happen." Mr. Samuel placed a hand on his son's shoulder, patting it gently. "It's not your fault, Marcus. This kind of thing happens everywhere. What matters is how you handled it. You did the right thing, absolutely right. I'm proud of you." He looked towards Sergeant Davis, who was preparing paperwork. "Now, I think I need to finish the task I've been trying to do for the past few days." He smiled faintly, a smile that had regained its calm. "I need to file that report about the hit and run. I suppose it will be accepted now, right?" Marcus looked at his father, his heart swelling with boundless love and respect. He nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Dad. Absolutely." He stood up and walked toward Sergeant Davis. "Sergeant, please take Mr. Bellwether's report carefully. Record every detail he provides, and I want this case prioritized for immediate investigation. Understood?" "Yes, Chief," Davis responded decisively and respectfully. He understood that resolving Mr. Samuel's case quickly and efficiently was now not just a job responsibility, but also the best way to show remorse and respect for the father of his esteemed commander. Marcus Bellwether then took extra time to personally speak with and thank each witness who had patiently stayed to provide information. He reassured them and pledged that the department would not tolerate any abuse of power or discrimination. He also directed other officers to quickly restore order, ensuring all police department operations continued normally, serving the public effectively. He knew the repercussions of this incident would linger, but he was ready to face them and determined to turn it into an opportunity for reform, to clean up the force and regain the community's trust. Justice needed to be served fairly and rigorously, starting right at the threshold of the Redwood City Police Department. Meanwhile, the Internal Affairs Division, IAD, of the Redwood City Police Department, operating under the direct guidance and close supervision of Chief Marcus Bellwether, launched into action with unprecedented speed and determination. The incident was not merely a routine case of misconduct. It directly involved the chief's father, occurred publicly at headquarters, and touched upon the sensitive issues of racial discrimination and police service attitude. This demanded an investigation that was swift, thorough, impartial, and absolutely transparent to quell any suspicion of cover-up or favoritism. The official statement of Mr. Samuel Bellwether, carefully recorded by Sergeant Davis immediately after the incident, became the core document of the investigation. With the calm demeanor and remarkable memory of an experienced man, he recounted in detail the entire process, from the 2 previous rejections at the department to the tense third confrontation, the insulting remarks, the refusal of duty, and finally, the baseless handcuffing and arrest by Jenkins and Novak. His testimony was devoid of exaggeration or personal emotional embellishment, simply presenting the facts objectively. His statement was strongly corroborated by the testimony of Sergeant Davis, who, although initially hesitant, subsequently provided truthful information about what he heard and saw. Even more importantly was the consistent testimony from dozens of other witnesses, the citizens present in the lobby that day. They not only confirmed Mr. Samuel's story, but also expressed deep indignation at the attitude and behavior of the two officers. Many of them voluntarily provided cell phone video footage they had recorded, capturing the most crucial moments of the incident, from when Jenkins and Novak started raising their voices to the scene of them kneeling and begging. The extensive security camera system in the lobby and reception area was also retrieved and thoroughly analyzed. Although it might not have captured all the audio clearly, the footage distinctly showed the arrogant attitudes, the pointing gestures, Jenkins stepping out from behind the counter, and the moment Novak used force to handcuff Mr. Samuel. All this evidence formed an undeniable web documenting the misconduct of the two officers. Ray Jenkins's personnel file was also carefully reviewed by IAD. It revealed a long history of minor complaints regarding rude behavior, subtly discriminatory remarks, and a lack of enthusiasm in his work, especially when dealing with citizens from minority groups or disadvantaged backgrounds. However, due to lack of concrete evidence or internal leniency and cover-ups in the past, Jenkins had always escaped severe disciplinary action. This incident, with its overwhelming evidence and special attention from the highest level, left no room for tolerance. Chris Novak, although having a cleaner record due to being newer to the force, clearly demonstrated through this incident a lack of independent judgment, susceptibility to being drawn into misconduct, and a smug, disrespectful attitude towards citizens. Faced with experienced IAD investigators and the mountain of irrefutable evidence laid before them, Jenkins and Novak quickly abandoned any attempts at evasion or blame-shifting. Knowing there was no hope left to salvage their careers, both finally bowed their heads and admitted to their complete misconduct, from deliberately refusing to take the report, using derogatory and discriminatory language, to abusing their authority to unjustly arrest Mr. Samuel. This belated confession, while unable to erase their wrongdoing, helped expedite the investigation process and further solidified the basis for the final disciplinary decision. The IAD's final report was completed within just a few days and submitted to Chief Bellwether. The conclusion was definitive and unshakable. Officer Ray Jenkins and Officer Chris Novak had seriously violated numerous critical articles in the Redwood City Police Department's Code of Conduct and Professional Ethics, including regulations on duty performance, anti-discrimination policies, reasonable use of force, and the prohibition of abuse of authority. Their actions not only directly harmed the victim, but also had a profound negative impact on the image, reputation, and public trust in the entire police force. The sole recommendation, commensurate with the severity of the violations, was to impose the highest form of discipline, permanent termination from the police force. Chief Marcus Bellwether, after carefully reviewing the report and accompanying evidence, approved this decision without hesitation. Although a nagging anguish remained in his heart about his father having to endure such a horrific incident right where he was in charge, as the leader, he knew he had to act impartially, decisively, and without leniency to maintain discipline and set an example for the entire force. Any favoritism or leniency, however slight, would sow the seeds for similar offenses in the future. To ensure transparency and public disclosure, as well as to send a strong message to the entire community and the police force, Chief Bellwether decided to hold an official press conference. Before a large crowd of newspaper and television reporters and representatives of community organizations, he announced the permanent termination of Ray Jenkins and Chris Novak. He strongly condemned the racist behavior, abuse of power, and callous attitude of the two former officers, calling it an unacceptable stain on the police profession. He once again offered his sincerest and deepest apologies to the citizens of the city. specifically emphasizing that all citizens must be treated fairly and respectfully when seeking police assistance, regardless of who they are. He also did not hesitate to share that the victim in this incident was someone he deeply respected, which only strengthened his resolve to see the matter through to the end. Finally, he pledged to continue pushing forward internal reform programs, enhance training in ethics, communication skills, cultural sensitivity, and anti-discrimination for all officers, and establish a stricter, more effective system for oversight and discipline to prevent future bad apples from spoiling the bunch. The firm termination decision and the chief's public, transparent stance received strong agreement and support from public opinion. It not only helped somewhat assuage public outrage, but also reinforced trust in the Redwood City Police Department's ability to self-cleanse and improve. The image of a black police chief taking firm action against offending subordinates, even when the incident involved his own family, created a profound impression of integrity and fairness. Mr. Samuel Bellwether, after his own matter was satisfactorily resolved, the hit-and-run vehicle was found thanks to more determined police efforts, and he received necessary support from insurance and the department. Returned to his quiet, modest life in the small apartment complex. He never brought up the sad incident with bitterness or gloating. He only felt sorry for the two men who had ruined their own lives and careers because of foolish prejudices and ingrained laziness. He was proud of his son, not just because Marcus had achieved a high position in society, but more importantly, because his son had maintained integrity, courage, and fairness when facing a difficult challenge involving both emotion and responsibility. The incident in the Redwood City Police Department lobby became a profound lesson, an unforgettable warning for all officers throughout the force. The image of two once arrogant, overbearing colleagues kneeling and begging in humiliation was deeply etched into their minds. It reminded them that power comes with responsibility, that the uniform they wear is for serving the people, not intimidating or demeaning them, and that any act of power abuse or discrimination, no matter how subtle, would ultimately carry a price. And more importantly, it affirmed that, no matter where, no matter the circumstances, human dignity must be respected, and justice, though sometimes obscured by prejudice or abuse of power, always remains a beacon, guiding those who dare to believe in and fight for it. Justice had been served, right at the threshold of the place meant to be its fortress. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this entire story. If you enjoyed this content, please hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.